you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Leandro de Armas. I'm a senior at Palmer Trinity School.
Hi, my name is Gianna Hutton. I'm a junior at Miami Palmetto Senior High School.
Okay, so tell us why we're here today.
I can start off if you want. Okay, so we're co-presidents of the Miami Youth Climate Summit. We're a summit dedicated to not only educating students in Florida, specifically the South Floridian community, about climate change, but also furthering that in not only what is climate change, but what can we do about climate change? So kind of empowering students to take action.
And how did you get involved?
So personally, I got involved. I was just approached by my environmental action club advisor. He just mentioned that this opportunity was going on to get involved in a...
Who's that?
Who's that? Leopoldo Ginas, Dr. Ginas. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, much appreciated.
So there's young people have been involved for years in moving forward and making tomorrow a better place. It took us a long time to figure out that climate change was a real deal that was happening. And we know that the federal government funding is paying attention. There's a $6 billion project that's being proposed for downtown-ish area. I saw some designs for it last night. 40 years ago, it would have been laughed away. So how is it that you are firm believers that the challenges that we're facing, that we can deal with them?
Well, I can go ahead if you want, Lalo.
She's the boss. Sorry. It's Ladies' Day 2021.
So I think education is central to that. That's why we're hosting this summit, because for me at least, even though I was educated about climate change since 8th grade, thanks to actually one of our speakers, Miss Vasquez, she introduced me to the concept of climate change, and I never was fully able to kind of contextualize it and the urgency of it and how it's going to impact me until I was in my 10th grade AP environmental science class, a class that, mind you, not all students take. It's an AP class. And I really it sat in with me. I was like, this is going to affect me and those after me in a way that I couldn't even imagine. So that education was central in my climate journey. And that's kind of what we're hoping to provide to students in regards to helping them on those steps to take action, empowering them through education. So I think that a large part of that, and the realization with that this is an issue on a more national scale, came through increased education and media attention and youth driving this movement.
So, Leandro, how did you get involved in this? And what have you done so far?
Are you referring to the climate movement in general?
Yes. Well, okay. For this climate summit that you're doing.
For the climate summit?
Yes.
So I guess I'll elaborate a bit on what I said earlier. So, well, really, my roots in climate change is very similar to what Gianna was saying. It came about just being educated on just the urgency of the climate movement. For me, that was by attending, I'll plug now this event, the 0 Hour Youth Miami Climate Summit. This took place summer of 2019. And essentially, I kind of just learned that the climate crisis was a thing and that it was affecting communities here in Miami. Prior to that, for me, it seemed like climate change was just this kind of future threat that wasn't immediate in any sense. That, here in Florida, where we experience or at least for, a privileged person such as myself, I experienced a higher, quality of life. So I didn't feel like it was ever going to really, it was something that I had to consider. But I realized that there were a lot of communities here. If you want to, talk about Little Haiti, that's an example that's brought up a lot with the climate gentrification, that are already experiencing the brunt of climate change. So that education, that awareness is what really propelled me to actually get involved in the movement, take action. And one of the ways in which I've just happened to take action and been providing the opportunity to take action is through my involvement in the summit.
So Gianna, sometimes we have to see pictures of things happening or videos. There have been some great commercials that is connected to this when we see all the plastic bottles and all the trash that is in our ocean, right? It's so impactful when we can see that, and when we can see the glaciers, melting, and then there's some message that's in there. And the old years ago, oh, isn't that beautiful? You can see it crack, right? And so how are you going to communicate with people about the severity of this particular problem?
So actually, going into that, one of our keynote speakers is Delaney Reynolds, who had that similar effect to me. She came in and I met her this summer, and she just spoke about how first she was educated on climate change, and then eventually she saw it around her. She was from the Keys. She grew up going there, and she saw the effects of climate change and what was happening in her community. She started posting videos of her literally in her like area, like standing in like a flooded little region and saying like, this is not okay, we need climate action. And slowly she gained traction and grew, and her organization grew, and now she's suing the state of Florida for not acting upon climate change. So just like having seen that in like a visual in terms of another youth person who's acting on climate change and who was able to make it to like National Geographic, MTV, that kind of showed me at least like that this is like a real issue, and it helped me like sit in with the urgency of this. And so, yeah, going back to what you were saying, like bringing it back, she's going to be a keynote speaker. So people like that we have like set on this agenda that really communicate the urgency of this issue and just how important it is are going to cement that understanding in the attendees.
Well, they have to get involved in order to be around other people so they can see it for themselves and see if they want to be involved. Now, Delaney Lawrence was instrumental here in the city of South Miami.
Yeah.
Did she ever tell you what?
Yeah, the solar panel ordinance.
Yes. So that was really significant for that to happen. I'm going to think that was probably 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And she's really made an impact. I'm not sure what drove her to that point, but for each of us, there's a different thing. What caused you to say, I need to do this?
Well, going back to the summit that I attended, it was just understanding that, you know, my privilege wasn't representative, or like my experience wasn't, I couldn't generalize it to the larger South Florida population, that there were others who were, you know, not as fortunate as I was in terms of just, you know, like their geographic privileges, you know, people on 8th Street. I mean, it gets flooded there all the time. And if you want to talk projections, it's projected, you know, like the king tides, which are the annual tides. Currently, they occur like less than a handful of times a year. And it's, you know, you have just a lot of sea level rise there, or a lot of flooding that occurs within, you know, just a few hours span. That's going to increase by 2045. It's expected to increase to 120 days a year of that flooding. So that's something that, you know, I don't experience where I live, but others do experience and are going to experience at a greater rate. So it was just the understanding that, again, my experience, I can't, you know, generalize that to the larger population. I have to acknowledge my privilege, realize that, you know, through my privilege, I have an obligation to stand up for those who don't have that.
So, Gianna, so we understand you go from some awareness, maybe there's a problem, to an acute awareness, and then to doing it because you think you should do it. And then it moves from, yes, I might want to do it, to this very high state.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get from this, I think I should do something, to becoming an ambassador or an evangelist for the cause?
No, yeah. So I started off, I was like like I said, AP Environmental Science. I was like, oh, this is an issue. And then I was at a meeting. It was just a regular meeting. And I met someone called Nicole Gazzo. She's an amazing activist here in Miami. And she spoke up. She like stood up, which was something like bizarre to me. Like she just stood up and started talking about the September 20th climate strike that was occurring in the city of Miami Beach. And I had never like even considered that I could do anything more than just be educated on this. Like I didn't know the extent of what youth activism was. And so I became really passionate in this topic. And not only that, but I learned the impact of the youth voice. I worked with the Clio Institute and Gen Clio and Sunrise Miami and Fridays for Future, all these organizations to help declare climate emergencies in little jurisdictions across Miami. And seeing that like my voice had power was really what propelled me to become more of an activist, as you say.
So, Leandro, sometimes people need permission. They just feel it inside. Tell us about how you gave yourself permission to do that. What occurred in your brain that you could stand up and fight for these things?
That's something I've thought about a lot. I don't think I've ever really been able to pinpoint it, in terms of like what, like the steps that occurred between recognizing my privilege and actually feeling like obligated to take action on it. I think a big part of it was the fact that my initial introduction to the climate movement was one that was already youth-led. Like the summit I attended was a youth summit. So I think I had this inherent understanding that youth had like a really powerful voice and the potential to put on not just big events, but just really increase turnout, galvanize a lot of support for a movement that wasn't really being endorsed by the older generations. So I think my introduction to climate change and the climate movement, since it was already tied with that youth action, I think it was really easy for me to transition from a place of like, I understand that this is an issue to actually realizing like I have to take action on it and be an ambassador, as you say, for the movement.
So Gianna, you said that you stood up.
Yeah.
All right. What happened in your grade that you thought you could do that?
Well, that was actually Nicole, but I later did it in many classrooms. So for me, it was really seeing that other youth were like Leandro said, like they did that. It showed me that our voice had power. And so for me, it was seeing the impact of other youth that kind of showed me that like, this is okay. And I should be doing this. I should be trying to protect my community. And I need to get other people involved in this so that they can have the same passion that I've developed.
Sometimes in life you realize sometimes it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. We've been in the publishing field for 50 years. And when we deliver products to people, if we had to ask every person to drop it off, all right, it would take a long time, all right? And a lot of people would say no. So we just assume that it is okay to do it. And as each of you have done that, you mentioned about responsibility. What is above responsibility? All right, this next level of self-actualization. How could you describe it to where you're going to be in 3 months and 6 months and a year from now on this cause? Why don't you tell us?
Above responsibility. That's interesting. I've never been asked this, so it's new for me. Right. But I'd say above responsibility is you have to take it with its context, like you're mentioning, like considering the effects 3-6 months from now. So I think that, just considering the context that, in the future, this crisis is only going to worsen, that, like the disparity between, how communities face, or like, I would say just the inequality that exists now in like our current systems is only going to be exacerbated by this crisis as you continue moving forward. So I think when you recognize that like the longer you wait to take action is like things are only going to worsen, then I think that's where like responsibility goes hand in hand with really understanding like what you're actually dealing with and deciding to take action.
Your folks say to you, hey, listen, we're going out of town for 2 days. It's your responsibility to take care of the dog. So, Gianna, let me ask you something. What's that next level that's above just taking care of the dog and making sure it's fed and that you walk it? There's this other level of self-actualization that is important for each of us to achieve in our lives. Could you try to describe that?
So for me, it was like just shock, like for me, because I feel like just letting that like set in that I might not be even able to live here when I'm 50. By 2100, it's expected a rise of as much or more than 8 to 10 feet cannot be ruled out. My house would be underwater. That shock, that urgency drives you beyond that responsibility, that fear that has created a passion to create change. I feel like that is beyond responsibility. It's like a duty.
What would you, if you could give it a name, what would you call it? Responsibility. Take care of the dog, make sure you walk them. All right? We get that. But there's this other level that's higher than that. All right? And I'm going to try to help you. It's your obligation.
Yeah.
Clearly. All right? It's your responsibility and it's your obligation to do it. Because the reality is, if you don't do it, it's not going to get done the way that you like that. Have you had an opportunity to speak to the new first Chief Bay Officer yet? You might want to look her up, Miami-Dade County. I'm not going to tell you her name, but you can go find her and you can email her, text her,
Will do.
and you're welcome. And talk to her. All right? They've been very involved, all right? First time that's been handled because the county is recognizing these challenges.
Yeah.
There are 120,000 septic tanks in Miami-Dade County, which is going to require $5 to $10 billion to sort of fix that, right? New pipes, new everything. So it is your obligation, right, to make sure that things are better because it'll go by very, 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 very fast. And there's a lot of pipes throughout the Dade County that are 40, 50 years old under the ground. When you see the roads collapsing, that's because these old cast iron pipes are broken. So again, we're going to wrap up with when is the Miami Youth Climate Summit, and how can people find out more about it?
I'll start off with one, and then you can do how. Okay. It's
just get used to it.
It's Saturday, March 6th.
Okay.
You can go ahead and build on
Saturday,
that.
March 6th. Yes. What else about it? What are the
Where?
details?
What
Where? This is fully virtual.
Okay.
So
How
yeah,
do they find it?
Go to our website, miamiyouthclimatesummit.org, or visit our Instagram. All of our social medias are youthclimate.mia.
It's really important that you continue on that. I hope that you're able to bring other people in. Sometimes they do slowly, right? Sometimes you have to pull them in, right? But you need to get support, and you need to be an evangelist for your cause. I'm delighted that you're doing that. And years ago, there was 2 100-year floods back to back within 2 years of each other. And that water, we had 3 properties, and there's flood rate needs for a long time. So those things we're facing, and there's certainly a challenge for us. Speak to your congresswomen down at this end. You have newly elected Congressman Carlos Jimenez and Rita Salazar, right? I'm sure they would love to hear from you, right? So we can get more awareness and get people involved. And I'm delighted for you. Say hello to
Will do. I got it. Delaney Reynolds.
Yes. And I have a lot of admiration for her because she and you guys do not need permission to do this. Again, thank you for being here. And you got 30 seconds to say something to some young person and they're looking to their future. Which camera should he look at? Right over here. And tell them why they should get involved.
you should get involved just because you have a voice. It's important to recognize that and learn about how you can, step up and really take action. There's a lot going on here that oftentimes is overlooked, not just in South Florida, but in the nation in general, regarding the climate crisis. So, attend, learn about the ways you can get involved and what it really means to stand up and fight for climate action.
Okay, Gianna, you're on.
You have a voice. It is important. It is so vital to the climate movement. All voices are welcome, and just recognize that. Come learn with us, grow with us, and join us on March 6th.
That's great. Again, our guest today is Gianni and Leandro. And folks, check into the Miami Youth Climate Summit. You can find them all over the line everywhere. Again, thank you for joining us. Keep up the good work. Folks, again, this is Live with Miami's Community News. Have a